Hey everybody, I will be continuing with our Read Aloud Wonder by R.J. Palacio. Ms. Stegbauer started yesterday and I will be continuing today. We are going to be alternating this book. I will be continuing on with pages 24 and ending with page 44. So we are now on the grand tour. Jack, Will, Julian, Charlotte, and I went down a big hallway to some wide stairs. No one said a word as we walked up to the third floor. When we got to the top of the stairs, we went down a little, halfway full of lots of doors. Julian opened the door marked 301. This is our homeroom, he said, standing in front of the half-open door. We have Ms. Petosa. May said she's okay, at least for homeroom. I heard she's really strict if you get her for math, though. That's not true, said Charlotte. My sister had her last year, and she said that she's totally nice. Not what I heard, answered Julian, but whatever. He closed the door and continued walking down the hallway. This is the science lab, he said when he got to the next door. And just like that he did 2 seconds ago, he stood in front of the half-open door and started talking. He didn't look at me once when he talked, which was okay because I wasn't looking at him either. You won't know who you have for science until the first day of school, but you want to get Mr. Haller. He used to be in the lower school. He didn't play his giant tuba in class. It was a baritone horn, said Charlotte. It was a tuba, answered Julian, closing the door. Dude, let him go inside so he can check it out. Jack Will told him, pushing past Julian and opening the door. Go inside if you want, Julian said. It was the first time he looked at me. I shrugged and walked over to the door. Julian moved out of the way quickly, like he was afraid. I might accidentally touch him as I passed him by. Nothing much to see, Julian said, walking in after me. He started pointing to a bunch of stuff around the room. That's the incubator. The big black thing is the chalkboard. These are the desks. These are the chairs. Those are the Bunsen burners. This is a gross science poster. This is chalk. This is the eraser. I'm sure he knows what an eraser is, Charlotte said, sounding a little bit like Via. How would I know what he knows? Julian answered. Mr. Tushman said he's never been to school before. You know what an eraser is, right? Charlotte asked me. I admit I was feeling so nervous that I didn't know what to say or to do except for look at the floor. Hey, can you talk? Asked Jack Will. Yeah, I nodded. I still really hadn't looked at any of them, yet not directly. You know what an eraser is, right? Asked Jack Will. Of course, I mumbled. I told you there was nothing to see in here, said Julian, shrugging. I have a question, I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. What exactly is homeroom? Is that like a subject? No, that's just your group, explained Charlotte, ignoring Julian's smirk. It's like where you go when you get to school in the morning and your homeroom teacher takes attendance and stuff like that. In a way, it's your main class, even though it's not really a class. I mean, it's a class, but I think he gets it, Charlotte, said Jack Will. Do you get it? Charlotte asked me. Yeah, I nodded at her. Okay, let's get out of here, said Jack Will, walking away. Wait, Jack, we're supposed to be answering questions, said Charlotte. Jack Will rolled his eyes a little as he turned around. Do you have any more questions? He asked. No, I answered. Oh, well, actually, yes. Is your name Jack or Jack Will? Jack is my first name, Will is my last name. Oh, because Mr. Tishman introduced you as Jack Will, so I thought, ha, you thought my name was Jack Will? Laughed Julian. Yeah, some people call me by my first and last name, Jack said, shrugging. I don't know why. Anyway, can we go now? Let's go to the performance space next, said Charlotte, leading the way out of the science room. It's very cool. You'll like it, August. The performance space. Charlotte basically didn't stop talking as we headed down to the second floor. She was describing the play they had put on last year, which was Oliver. She played Oliver even though she's a girl, and she said this. She pushed open the double doors to a huge auditorium. At the other end of the room was a stage. Charlotte started skipping towards the stage. Julia ran after her and then turned around halfway down the aisle. Come on, he said loudly, waving for me to follow him, which I did. There were like hundreds of people in the audience that night, said Charlotte, and it took me a second to realize she was still talking about Oliver. I was so nervous. I had so many lines, and I had a lot of these songs to sing. It was so hard. Although she was talking to me, she really didn't look at me much. On opening night, my parents were all the way in the back of the auditorium, like where Jack is right now. But when the lights are off, you can't really see that far back. So I was like, "Where are my parents? Where are my parents?" And then Mr. Resnick, our theater arts teacher last year, he said, "Charlotte, stop being such a diva." And I was like, "Okay." And then I spotted my parents, and then I was totally fine. I didn't forget a single line. While she was talking, I noticed Julian staring at me out of the corner of his eye. This is something I see people do a lot with me. They think I don't know they're staring, but I can tell from the way their heads are tilted. I turned around to see where Jack had gone to. He stayed in the back of the auditorium like he was bored. "We put on a play every year," said Charlotte. "I don't think he's going to want to be in the school play," Charlotte said Julian sarcastically. "You can be in the play without actually being in the play," Charlotte answered, looking at me. "You can do the lighting, you can do the paint, you can paint the backdrops." "Oh, yay, whoopee," said Julian, twirling his fingers in the air. "But you don't have to take the theater arts elective if you don't want to," Charlotte said, shrugging. "There's dance or chorus or band. There's leadership." "Only dorks take leadership," Julian interrupted. "Julian, you're being so obnoxious," said Charlotte, which made Julian laugh. "I'm taking the science elective," I said. "Cool," said Charlotte. Julian looked directly at me. "The science elective is supposedly the hardest elective of all," he said. "No offense, but if you've never ever been in school before, why do you think you're suddenly going to be smart enough to take the science elective? I mean, have you ever studied science before? Like real science? Not like the kind you do in the kits." "Yeah," I nodded. "He was homeschooled," Julian said, Charlotte. "So teachers came to his house?" asked Julian, looking puzzled. "No, his mother taught him," answered Charlotte. "Is she a teacher?" Julian said. "Is your mother a teacher?" Charlotte asked me. "No," I said. "So she's not a real teacher," said Julian, as if that proved his point. "That's what I mean. How can someone who's not a real teacher actually teach science?" "I'm sure you'll do just fine," said Charlotte, looking at me. "Let's just go to the library now," Jack called out, sounding really bored. "Why is your hair so long?" Julian said to me. He sounded like he was annoyed. I didn't know what to say, so I just shrugged. "Can I ask you a question?" he said. I shrugged again. Didn't he just ask me a question? "What's the deal with your face? I mean, were you in a fire or something?" "Julian, that's so rude," said Charlotte. "I'm not being rude," said Julian. "I'm just asking a question. Mr. Tishman said we could ask questions if we wanted to." "Not rude questions like that," said Charlotte. "Besides, he was born like that. That's what Mr. Tishman said. You just weren't listening." "I was so listening," said Julian. "I thought maybe he was in a fire, too." "Geez, Julian," said Jack. "Just shut up." "You shut up," Julian yelled. "Come on, August," said Jack. "Let's just go to the library already." I walked toward Jack and followed him out of the auditorium. He held the double doors open for me, and as I passed by, he looked right at me in the face, kind of daring me to look back at him, which I did. Then I actually smiled. I don't know, sometimes when I have the feeling like I'm almost crying, it can turn into an almost laughing feeling. And that must have been the feeling I was having then because I smiled almost like I was going to giggle. The thing is, because of the way my face is, people who don't know me very well don't always get that I'm smiling. My mouth doesn't go up at the corners the way other people's mouths do. It just goes straight across my face. But somehow Jack Will got that I smiled at him, and he smiled back. "Julian's a jerk," he whispered before Julian and Charlotte reached us. "But dude, you're gonna have to talk," he said this seriously, like he was trying to help me. I nodded as Julian and Charlotte caught up with me. We were all quiet for a second, all of us kind of nodding, looking at the floor. Then I looked up at Julian. "The word supposedly, by the way," I said. "What are you talking about? You said supposedly before," I said. "I didn't." "Yes, you did," Charlotte nodded. "You said that science is supposedly really hard. I heard you." "I absolutely did not," he insisted. "Whatever," said Jack. "Let's just go." Yeah, let's just go, agreed Charlotte, following Jack down the stairs to the next floor. I started to follow her, but Julian cut right in front of me, which actually made me stumble backwards. Oops, sorry about that, said Julian, but I could tell from the way he looked at me he wasn't really sorry at all. The deal. Mom and Mr. Tushman were talking when we got back to the office. Mrs. Garcia was the first to see us come back, and she started smiling her shiny smile when we walked by. So, August, what do you think? Did you like what you saw? She asked. Yeah, I nodded, looking over at my mom. Jack, Julian, and Charlotte were standing by the door, not sure where to go or if they were still needed. I wondered what else they'd been told about me before they met me. Did you see the baby chick? Mom asked me. As I shook my head, Julian said, Are you talking about the baby chicks in science? Those get donated to a farm at the end of every school year. Oh, said Mom, disappointed. But they hatch new ones every year in science, Julian added, so August will be able to see them again in the spring. Oh, good, said Mom, eyeing me. They're so cute, August. I wish you wouldn't talk to me like I was a baby in front of other people. So, August, said Mr. Tushman, did these guys show you around enough, or do you want to see more? I realized I forgot to ask them to show you the gym. We did anyway, Mr. Tushman, said Julian. Excellent, said Mr. Tushman. And I told him about the school play and some of the electives, said Charlotte. Oh no, she said suddenly. We forgot to show him the art room. That's okay, said Mr. Tushman. But we can show it to him now, Charlotte offered. Don't we have to pick up Via soon? I said to Mom. That was our signal for my mom, telling my mom if I really wanted to leave. Oh, you're right, said Mom, getting up. I could tell she was pretending to check the time on her watch. I'm sorry, everybody. I lost track of time. We have to go pick up my daughter at her new school. She's taking an unofficial tour today. This part wasn't a lie. That Via was checking on her new school today. The part that was a lie was that we were picking her up at school, which we weren't. She was coming home with Dad later. Where does she go to school? Asked Mr. Tushman, getting up. She's starting Faulkner High School this fall. Wow, that's not an easy school to get into. Good for her. Thank you, said Mom, nodding. It'll be a bit of a schlep, though. The A train down at 86, then the crosstown bus all the way to the east side. Takes an hour that way, but it's just a 15-minute drive. It'll be worth it. I know a couple kids who got into Faulkner and they love it, said Mr. Tushman. We should really go, Mom, I said, tugging at her pocketbook. We said goodbye kind of quickly after that. I think Mr. Tushman was a little surprised that we were leaving so suddenly. And then I wondered if he would blame Jack and Charlotte, even though it really was only Julian who made me feel kind of bad. Everyone was nice, I made sure to tell Mr. Tushman before we left. I look forward to having you as a student, said Mr. Tushman, patting me on my back. Bye, I said to Jack, Charlotte, and Julian, but I didn't look at them or look up at all until I left the building. Home. As we walked at least half a block from the school, Mom said, So how'd it go? Did you like it? Not yet, Mom. When we get home, I said. The moment we got inside, I ran to my room and threw myself on my bed. I could tell Mom didn't know what was up, and I guess I really didn't either. I felt very sad and a tiny bit happy at the exact same time, kind of like that laughing, crying feeling all over again. My dog Daisy followed me into the room, jumped on the bed, and started licking me all over my face. Who's a good girlie? I said in my dad's voice. Who's a good girlie? Is everything okay, sweetness? Mom said. She wanted to sit down beside me, but Daisy was hogging the bed. Excuse me, Daisy. She sat down, nudging Daisy over. Were those kids not nice to you, Augie? Oh, no, I said, only half lying. They were okay. But were they nice? Mr. Tushman went out of his way to tell me what sweet kids they are. Uh-huh. I nodded, but I kind of kept looking at Daisy, kissing her on the nose and rubbing her ear until her back leg did a little flea scratch shake. That boy Julian seemed especially nice, Mom said. Oh, no, he was the least nice. I liked Jack, though. He was nice. I thought his name was Jack Will, but it's just Jack. Wait, maybe I'm getting them confused. Which one is the one with the dark hair that was brushed forward? Julian. And he wasn't nice? No, not nice. Oh. She thought about it for a second. Okay, so he is the kind of kid who's one way in front of grown-ups and another way in front of kids? Yeah, I guess. Oh, I hate those kids, she answered, nodding. He was like, So, August, what's the deal with your face? I said, looking at Daisy the whole time. Were you in a fire or something? Mom didn't say anything. When I looked up at her, I could tell she was completely shocked. He didn't mean it to say it in that way, I said quickly. He was just asking. Mom nodded. But I really like Jack, I said. He was like, shut up, Julian. And Charlotte was like, you're so rude, Julian. Mom nodded again. She pressed her fingers on her forehead like she was pushing against a headache. I'm so sorry, Augie, she said quietly. Her cheeks were bright red. No, it's okay, Mom, really. You don't have to go to school if you don't want to, sweetie. I want to, I said. Augie? Really, Mom, I want to. And I wasn't lying. First day jitters. Okay, so I admit that the first day of school, I was so nervous that the butterflies in my stomach were more like pigeons flying around in my insides. Mom and Dad were probably a little nervous too, but they all acted excited for me, taking pictures of me and Via before we left the house, since it was Via's first day of school too. Up until a few days before, we still weren't sure I would be going to school at all. After my tour at the school, Mom and Dad had reversed sides on whether I should go or not. Mom was now the one saying I shouldn't go, and Dad was saying I should. Dad had told me he was really proud of how I handled myself with Julian, and that I was turning into quite the strong man. And I heard him tell Mom that he now thought she had been right all along. But Mom, I could tell, wasn't so sure anymore. When Dad told her that he and Via wanted to walk me to school today, too, since it was on the way to the subway station, Mom seemed relieved that we would all be going together. And I guess I was too. Even though Beecher Prep is just a few blocks from our house, I've only been on the block a couple times before. In general, I try to avoid blocks when there are lots of kids roaming around. On our block, everybody knows me, and I know everybody. I know every brick and every tree trunk, every crack in the sidewalk. I know Mr. Grimaldi, the lady who's always sitting by her window, and the old guy who walks up and down the street whistling like a bird. I know the deli on the corner where Mom gets our bagels, and the waitress at the coffee shop who all call me honey and give me lollipops whenever they see me. I love my neighborhood of North River Heights, which is why it is so strange to be walking down these blocks feeling like it was all new to me suddenly. Aimfort Avenue, a street I've been down a million times, looks totally different for some reason. Full of people I never saw before, waiting for buses, pushing strollers. We crossed Amesfort and turned up Heights Place. Via walked next to me like she normally does, and Mom and Dad were behind us. As soon as we turned the corner, we saw all the kids in front of the school, hundreds of them talking to each other in little groups, laughing or standing with their parents, who were talking with other parents. I kept my head way down. Everyone's just nervous as you are, said Via in my ear. Just remember that this is everyone's first day of school, okay? Mr. Tushman was greeting students and parents in front of the school entrance. I have to admit, so far nothing bad had happened. I didn't catch anyone staring or even noticing me. Only once did I look up to see some girls looking my way and whispering with their hands cupped over their mouths, but they looked away when they saw me notice them. We reached the front entrance. Okay, so this is it, big boy, said Dad, putting his hands on top of my shoulders. Have a great first day. I love you, said Via, giving me a big kiss and a hug. You too, I said. I love you, Augie, said Dad, hugging me. Bye. Then Mom hugged me, but I could tell she was about to cry, which would have totally embarrassed me, so I gave her a fast hug hard, turned, and disappeared into the school. Locks. I went straight to room 301 on the third floor. Now I was glad I had gone on that little tour because I knew exactly where to go and I didn't have to look up once. I noticed that some kids were definitely staring at me now. I did my thing of pretending not to notice. I went inside the classroom and the teacher was writing on the chalkboard while all the kids were started sitting at different desks. The desks were in half circle facing the chalkboard, so I chose the desk in the middle toward the back, which I thought would make it harder for everyone to stare at me. I still kept my head way down, just looking up enough from under my bags to see everyone's feet. As the desk started to fill up, I did notice that no one sat down next to me. A couple of times someone was about to sit next to me, then changed his or her mind at the last minute and sat somewhere else. Hey, August! It was Charlotte giving me her little wave as she sat down at a desk in front of the class. Why anyone would ever choose to sit way up in the front of the class, I don't know. Hey, I said, nodding hello. Then I noticed Julian was sitting a few seats away from her, talking to some kids. I know he saw me, but he didn't say hello. Suddenly, someone was sitting down next to me. It was Jack Will. Jack. What's up? He said, nodding at me. Hey, Jack, I answered, waving my hand, which I immediately wish I hadn't done because it felt kind of uncool. Okay, kids, okay, everybody, settle down, said the teacher, now facing us. She had written her name, Ms. Patosa, on the chalkboard. Everybody find a seat. Please, come in, she said to a couple of kids who had just walked into the room. There's a seat there and right there. She hadn't noticed me yet. Now the first thing I wanted everyone to do was stop talking. She noticed me. Put your backpack down and quiet down. She had only hesitated for a millionth of a second, but I could tell the moment she saw me, like I said, I'm used to it by now. I'm going to take attendance and do the seating chart. She continued, sitting on the edge of her desk. Next to her were 3 neat rows of accordion folders. When I call your name, come up and I'll hand you a folder with your name on it. It contains your class schedule and your combination lock, which you should not try to open until I tell you. Your locker number is written on the class schedule. Be forewarned that some lockers are not right outside this class, but down the hall. And before anyone even thinks of asking, no, you cannot switch lockers and you cannot switch locks. Then, if there's time at the end of this period, we're all going to get to know each other a little better. Okay? Okay. She picked up the clipboard on her desk and started reading the names out loud. Okay, so Julian Albans, she said, looking up. Julian raised his hand and said, here, at the same time. Hi, Julian, she said, making a note on her seating chart. She picked up the very first folder and held it out toward him. Come pick it up, she said, kind of no nonsense. He got up and took it from her. Semenichin? She handed a folder to each kid as she read off names. As she went down the list, I noticed that the next seat next to me was the only one still empty, even though there were 2 kids sitting at one desk just a few seats away. When she called the names of them, a big kid named Henry Joplin, who already looked like a teenager, said, Henry, there's an empty desk right over there. Why don't you take that seat, okay? She handed him his folder and pointed to the desk next to mine. Although I didn't look at him directly, I could tell Henry did not want to move next to me, just by the way he dragged his backpack on the floor as he came over, like he was moving in slow motion. Then he plopped his backpack really high on his right side of the desk, so it was kind of like a wall between the desk and mine. Maya Markowitz, Miss Petosa was saying. Here, said a girl about 4 desks down from me. Miles Nuri? Here, said the kid that had been sitting with Henry Joplin. As he walked back to his desk, I saw him shoot Henry a poor you look. August Pullman, said Miss Petosa. Here, I said quietly, raising my hand a bit. Hi, August, she said, smiling at me nicely when I went up to get my folder. I kind of felt everyone's eyes burning into my back for the few seconds I stood in front of the class, and everybody looked down when I walked back to my desk. I resisted spinning the combination when I sat down, even though everyone else was doing it, because she had specifically told us not to. I was already pretty good at opening locks anyway, because I've used them on my bike. Henry kept trying to open his lock, but he couldn't do it. He was getting frustrated and kind of cursing under his breath. Miss Petosa called out the next few names. The last one was Jack Will. After she handed Jack his folder, she said, okay, so everybody write your combinations down somewhere safe that you won't forget it, okay? But if you do forget, which happens at least 3.2 times per semester, Ms. Garcia has a list of all the combination numbers. Now go ahead, take your locks out of your folders, and spend a couple of minutes practicing how to open them. Though I know some of you went ahead and did that anyway. She was looking at Henry when she said that. And in the meanwhile, I'll tell you guys a little something about myself. And then you guys can tell me a little about yourselves, and we'll get to know each other. Sounds good? Good. She smiled at everyone, though I felt like she was smiling at me the most. It wasn't a shiny smile like Mrs. Garcia's smile, but a normal smile like she meant it. She looked very different from what I thought teachers were going to look like. I guess I thought she would look like Miss Fowl from Jimmy Neutron, an old lady with a big bun on top of her head, but in fact she looked exactly like Mon Mothma from Star Wars Episode 6. Hair cut kind of like a boy's, and a big white shirt kind of like a tunic. She turned around and started writing on the chalkboard. Henry still couldn't get his lock to open, and he was getting more and more frustrated every time someone else popped one open. He got really annoyed when I was able to open mine on the first try. The funny thing is, if he hadn't put the backpack between us, I most definitely would have offered to help him. Around the room, Miss Petosa told us a little about who she was. It was boring stuff about where she originally came from and how she always wanted to teach. And she left her job on Wall Street about 6 years ago to pursue her dream and teach kids. She ended by asking if anyone had any questions, and Julian raised her hand. Yes. She had to look at the list to remember his name. Julian. That's cool about how you're pursuing your dream, he said. Thank you. You're welcome, he smiled proudly. Okay, so why don't you tell us a little about yourself, Julian? Actually, here's what I want everyone to do. Think of 2 things you want other people to know about you. Actually, wait a minute. How many of you came from the Beecher Lower School? About half of the kids raised their hands. Okay, so a few of you already know each other. But the rest of you, I guess, are new to this school, right? Okay, so everyone think of 2 things you want other people to know about you. And if you know some of the other kids, try to think of things they don't already know about you. Okay? Okay. So let's start with Julian, and we'll go around the room. Julian scrunched up his face and started tapping his forehead like he was thinking really hard. Okay, whenever you're ready, Ms. Petosa said. Okay, so number 1 is that... Do me a favor and start with your names, okay? Ms. Petosa interrupted. It'll help me remember everyone. Oh, okay. So my name is Julian, and the number 1 thing I'd like to tell everyone about myself is that I just got Battleground Mystic for my Wii, and it's totally awesome. And the number 2 thing is that we got a ping pong table this summer. Very nice. I love ping pong, said Ms. Petosa. Does anyone have a question for Julian? Is Battleground Mystic a multiplayer or one player, said a kid named Miles. Not those kind of questions, guys, said Ms. Petosa. Okay, so how about you? She pointed to Charlotte, probably because her desk was closest to the front. Oh, sure. Charlotte didn't hesitate even a second, like she knew exactly what she wanted to say. My name is Charlotte. I have 2 sisters, and we just got a new puppy named Suki in July. We got her from an animal shelter. She's so cute. That's great, Charlotte. Thank you, said Miss Petosa. Okay, then who's next? Lamb to the slaughter. Like a lamb to the slaughter, something that you say about someone who goes somewhere calmly, not knowing that something unpleasant is going to happen to them. I Googled it last night. That's what I was thinking when Ms. Petosa called my name, and suddenly it was my turn to talk. My name is August, I said, and yeah, I kind of mumbled it. What? Said someone. Can you speak up, honey? Said Miss Petosa. My name is August, I said louder, forcing myself to look up. I, have a sister named Via and a dog named Daisy, and, that's it. Wonderful, said Miss Petosa. Anyone have questions for August? No one said anything. Okay, you're next, said Miss Petosa to Jack. Wait, I have a question for August, said Julian, raising his hand. Why do you have that tiny braid in the back of your hair? Is that like a Padawan thing? Yeah, I shrugged, nodded. What's a Padawan thing? Said Miss Petosa, smiling at me. It's from Star Wars, answered Julian. A Padawan is a Jedi apprentice. Oh, interesting, asked Miss Petosa, looking at me. So you're into Star Wars, August? I guess, I nodded, not looking up because what I really wanted was just to slide under my desk. Who's your favorite character? Julian asked. I started thinking that maybe he wasn't so bad. Jango Fett. What about Darth Sidious? He said. Do you like him? Okay, guys, you can talk about Star Wars stuff at recess, said Miss Petosa cheerfully. But let's keep going. We haven't heard from you yet, she said to Jack. Now it was Jack's turn to talk, but I admit I didn't hear a word he said. Maybe no one got the Darth Sidious thing, and maybe Julian didn't mean anything at all. But in Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, Darth Sidious's faith face gets burned by the Sith lightning and becomes totally deformed. His skin gets all shriveled up and his whole face just kind of melts. I peeked at Julian and he was looking at me. Yeah, he knew what he was saying. All right, so starting tomorrow, Ms. Stegbauer will be continuing with Choose Kind. Thanks, everybody.